There is a war against nature raging in the savannas and jungles of Africa and Asia in a greedy, brutal battle over a limited resource.
It's a war, and we're losing it.
Poaching and wildlife trafficking have reached unprecedented dimensions.
I'll make a special deal for you.
Ivory and rhino horn have become lucrative commodities.
Essentially, this is the dark side of globalization.
Increasingly, criminal networks and terrorist groups use wildlife smuggling to fund their activities.
There's many people that have a big interest in investing in extinction, and we have to prevent those people from wiping those species out.
This is Rukinga, a wildlife sanctuary in southern Kenya. An elephant was slaughtered 5 days ago. Before we can see what has happened here, we can smell it. Three large bulls were all killed in the same night.
Yeah, this Prad, I think they were shot from somewhere there.
This area is visited regularly by gangs of poachers.
These are professionals. They are using sophisticated weapons. The people from around this area, they don't possess arms. These are people from outside. So those ones completely, they are well connected. Once they are done their activity, they have a destination whereby they take the ivories, and there's somebody ready waiting for them. Yeah, the ivory is taken there and they go away.
In 1900, 10 million elephants lived all over Africa. By 1989, that number had dropped to 600,000. Now, there are around 470,000 wild elephants left in Africa. We are facing the greatest mass extinction since the era of the dinosaurs. In Kenya alone, 10 elephants are killed every day that we know of. It's believed the total is much higher.
Elephants really do represent something about our greatness. They are such a magnificent species. Losing them is something that very few people could imagine. We take it for granted that they will always be there. The fact that elephants are being poached at such a rapid rate is a surprise to many, many people.
An average of 33,000 elephants are killed each year in Africa for their ivory. That's one every 15 minutes. Here in Cameroon, 400 elephants were killed in one night. A band of Janjaweed rebels from Sudan slaughtered these animals using AK-47s and hand grenades. Central Africa has lost 65% of its elephant population in the last decade. Forest elephants are on the brink of extinction. If poaching continues at this pace, elephants could be gone from the wild in less than 15 years. Kruger National Park is the biggest wildlife reserve in South Africa, home to the largest rhino population on Earth. Park rangers and forensics experts are going out to inspect a kill. A white rhino has been hacked to death for his horn. The rangers claim by poachers from Mozambique.
The front one will be here, the back one here. So they went in deep into the skull.
The rhino has gunshot wounds. It's very likely the animal was still alive when the poachers took his horn.
At the back, it's tried to open it for the vultures and those to come in, to move into the carcass, to destroy evidence.
Kruger National Park is a vast area, almost as big as Israel and hard to control. Between 1 and 2 rhinos are killed here every day. Poaching has hit a crisis point. Until 2007, fewer than 50 rhinos per year were poached. Since then, the numbers have exploded. In 2013, over 1,000. The numbers continue to rise. This has led the park authorities to take drastic measures. Rhinos are being relocated from the Kruger Park to safer areas, further away from the Mozambican border. There's a ring of private reserves around the park. Like Kruger, Magnoletti is being hit hard by poachers. Loet Schultz runs a small bush camp in Magnoletti Reserve.
It's escalating on a monthly basis. If you look at the figures, it goes up with 50 to 70% every month, rhino deaths. And we don't seem to get to grips with it. It's a war, and we're losing it. That's the bottom line.
The Magnoletti Rangers are constantly on the lookout for poachers. It's not long until we find the remains of a female white rhino.
These were amateurs. They damaged the whole horn, you see there? Where they hacked it here. If you get professionals, they take it off cleanly. Very often what happens is they cut it so deep, it impairs the breathing of the rhino. Then he might still be alive. It impairs the reading, and he smothers to death. Can't breathe anymore. It's a bad thing, man.
The fence is checked for signs of poachers.
You see the poaching spoor there? They went out from here. You see where they put their footsteps there?
The ranger's job has become increasingly dangerous. We are at a spot where the rangers had a firefight with poachers just a couple of weeks ago.
The man could come down so he'll drop front lock and to he'll suk to Kromni to Marco ambush to 5 o'clock.
Okay.
To a man drop him so and a man drop him so. To the man come. And I rain stand there and I rain come down so drop the fear so kick the fear. To Diane, I get nothing more is no me. Diane is a boss from a Ken here black. I come in the animals, they come there so, I shoot the rhino so. Diane is a boss from so a Ken that the rhino va blade down. Diane is so.
Our question whether he regrets having killed the poacher seems rather strange to Sam.
Diamond elemos, ele come to the amani so, elemos die dear. That's a dengue mag does too. Come in the anaman, another come anaman, another again die preg diamond. The money come America. I seen die hootes, a fatwa and the shelter so, a macom shelter so, I seen Mardayan.
For these people that do the poaching, the rhino means nothing to them. It gives them no pleasure, it gives them no benefit, it gives them nothing. They just see it, it's just an animal, it's a white man's toy. But if I take that horn from that rhino, I can buy myself a cell phone, I can buy myself a motor car, I can buy some presents for my girlfriend. That's what's important.
Johannesburg investigative journalist Julian Rademeyer has made it his mission to expose illegal trade in rhino horn.
The trade in lion bones, where they suddenly you begin to see this uptick from 2003 onwards. And all of that seems to be traced back to Vietnam.
One of the reasons for this spike is that South Africa is one of the few countries in the world where you can still get a permit to trophy hunt.
You begin to see Vietnamese names cropping up. Again and again. And initially it's a small blip, and then by 2008, 2009, it really picks up. And by the end of 2009, 2010, the Vietnamese hunters dominate the trade in rhino horn trophies. So you had dozens and eventually hundreds of horns going out from South Africa as trophies, arriving in Vietnam, not being declared to Vietnamese customs and just vanishing. 2 years ago, the Vietnamese government went and did a snap survey of some of the hunters that had shot rhinos in South Africa and taken the trophies out. Very few of them still had the trophies. You know, these were not trophy hunters. These were people coming in under the guise of trophy hunting to try and get as much rhino horn as possible.
After decades of isolation, Vietnam opened its economic doors to the world and has since experienced an unprecedented boom in prosperity and population. It has also become ground zero for the illegal international trade in rhino horn. Rhino horn was traditionally used to treat fever or headaches. Now it is being touted as a miracle cure for fatal diseases.
Theo tôi được biết thì hiện nay vì trong cái thời buổi bệnh ung thư phát triển nhiều, mà theo tin đồn là sừng tê giác có thể điều trị được bệnh ung thư, cho nên là người ta lao vào không sợ tốn tiền để mua sừng tê giác điều trị.
There was a myth that started doing the rounds in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City about an army general, it's sometimes said, sometimes a senior politician, sometimes a former prime minister who was cured of cancer by using rhino horn.
Do Hoang is a well-known journalist in Vietnam. He has investigated the illegal trade in rhino horn and says demand and prices are skyrocketing.
Không hẳn là như thế. Có rất nhiều người đi lùng sừng tê giác để cứu mạng sống của mình và người thân của mình với cái giá rất là đắt. Theo như tôi biết thì ở Việt Nam hiện nay giá một cái sừng tê giác khoảng độ 5 đến 60.000 đô la. Tức là gấp đến 2-3 lần cái ô tô đang đậu cạnh chúng ta đây. Nhưng mà có một cái số người nữa là họ là những người giàu, họ mua, họ biếu, họ làm quà tặng. Và đặc biệt là họ giữ trong nhà với cái niềm tin rằng nó có thể chữa được bệnh, hoặc nó có thể giải độc sau những cuộc rượu, hoặc nó có thể tốt hơn cho sức khỏe. Và một phần họ muốn thể hiện cái đẳng cấp giàu có của mình.
Hoang promises to try to arrange a meeting with a rhino horn user. Days later, Do Huai, who sells telecommunications devices, agrees to meet us at his house. Huai claims to have inherited the piece from his father. Owning rhino horn is not illegal in Vietnam. Trading it is.
Cái này lừa đảo. Theo tôi biết thì cái này ở Việt Nam bây giờ, tức là tôi không mua bán thường xuyên, nhưng tôi đoán thôi, phán đoán thôi. Một cái này thì chỉ chắc là cái này thì cái này chắc khoảng 3 đến 4.000 đô la tùy nha.
Huai admits that he also uses the rhino horn for himself and for friends.
Thông thường là khi mệt mỏi hoặc là trẻ con đau ốm sốt hoặc là người già yếu mệt. Mục đích là để giải độc. Khi mà rất là mệt mỏi, khi ở tuổi cao ốm nặng. Về tinh thần thì sẽ tỉnh, còn lại về thực tế thì tùy từng người.
Huai's father had cancer. They believe drinking rhino horn prolonged his life.
Này, một lượng như thế này.
Very seriously.
Bằng cả y tế hiện đại và bằng cả những cái
So they try their best.
được 1 năm rưỡi.
But numerous studies have proven that rhino has no curative qualities. Essentially, it's the same material as your own fingernails, keratin.
Phải đi chỗ nào khác chứ?
There has been an international ban on trading rhino horn for the past 30 years, and yet consumers still manage to get a hold of it. We send in an experienced undercover investigator posing as a wealthy Chinese buyer. She heads for Hanoi's Medical Street. Rhino horn used to be sold openly here. Succumbing to international pressure, though, authorities have been cracking down on illegal traders, making shopkeepers very wary. The investigator tries another shop. Here she makes some headway. The owner says that he could get a rhino horn from Singapore. Our investigator moves on. Finally, she gets lucky.
When we visit the store, and the store owner say, "Oh, we just have a guy who come in and out quite frequently, bring the stuff to us." So we asked him, "Can you arrange us to meet this person because we want to see if there's availability on Rhino Home."
3 days later, she gets a call and arranges to meet back at his shop. She is asked to wait outside. Obviously, she's being checked out.
We arrived and this dealer guy came over to the store. We meet in the back of the store and he told us how they change the color so they can get past the custom and can bring it into the country.
Making the horn look like wood is a common trick used by smugglers. The weight of both pieces is nearly 500 grams. That's worth approximately $25,000 US. The dealer believes our investigator is a serious buyer, so he fetches a catalog full of illegal wildlife products worth millions of dollars.
I think he's part of the big network, and all these things are very expensive at this moment in the market. And he took such a great risk, so he played quite an important role in this group. And I think the group has access to smuggling directly from both Asia and Africa.
At $50,000 US per kilo, it would seem to be a commodity only for the super rich. However, according to our undercover investigator, that is not so. She was told this story by a shop owner whose mother was interested in selling a small piece of rhino horn she had acquired.
She just say her mother be invited to this party. Everyone put in like $2,000, and when there is a rhino horn available, and they were inviting everyone to the party. So in front of everybody's very eyes, and they cut the rhino horn to pieces to give it to everyone.
These buying parties are providing much more affordable prices and thus wider access to the illegal trade. Poaching has spread all over Africa. Despite thousands of poachers having been killed, the profits keep luring them in. In this area of northern Kenya, constant patrols are made by this special ranger anti-poaching unit. This remote area is traditionally troubled by tribal conflict, drought, and poaching. The border with Somalia is not far away. One of these rangers used to be a poacher himself. 2 years ago, Lotok changed sides. He claims to have killed 150 elephants.
Ilikuwa ni kukutana tu, ni kupanga tukutane mahali fulani. Tunakutana kwa kichaka kwa sababu ni kitu ilikuwa ni asiri, hata ndugu yako hawezi jua, hata majirani, hata bibi yako hawezi jua.
Lotok used to be the leader of the group. His job was to shoot the elephant. The others had to remove the tusks.
Kaona ile sikiki ambaye, lakini hapo mbele nilikuwa naua bara tu ni ndovu, hata nikikuta kama kuna kilo mbili sikujua kwamba ina maana. Lakini nilipofanya nikaelewa, nilikuja ikawa ninatafuta ile dume. Na ile kike wakati dume inakosekana, nachukua ile kike ambaye ni mzee, ambaye naweza ona kama kuna kilo. Nilikuja ikafika kilo kama 15,000, lakini nilikuja hapa nilianza kama 1,000, 2,000.
15,000 Kenyan shilling is about $160 for a kilo of ivory. Since Lotok dropped out, that price has gone up to $500. The value of a single tusk is worth 10 times the average annual income in some African countries.
So long as the price of ivory continues to rise, then the incentive for those people in rural areas to poach elephants will remain high.
Poachers like Lotok don't have to search long for buyers. Thanks to globalization and investments in roads and infrastructure by foreign nationals, once isolated regions in Africa have become easily accessible.
We see Chinese people in Africa who come over for construction work, working on roads and buildings and bridges, and they go back to China with just one tusk, 3 kilos. And in Africa, it might cost them $100. And they know that when they get to China, it's already worth, $6,000. And if they hang on to that tusk for another 2 years, it could be worth $12,000.
The highway between Nairobi and Mombasa is one of the major arteries of Eastern Africa. It is a well-known route for trafficking networks shifting contraband into this busy port. Numerous studies indicate that poachers rarely operate on their own anymore. Organized crime, attracted by the huge profit margins in wildlife trafficking, has taken over. About 2,500 containers are being shipped in and out of here each day to destinations all over the world. Many contain illegal wildlife products. In Kenyan ports like Mombasa, large shipments totaling nearly 10 tons of ivory were confiscated last year alone. But the confiscated ivory is only the tip of the iceberg. Interpol estimates the actual amount of smuggled ivory to be 10 times higher. More than half of all seized ivory loads were destined for China. China's 1.3 billion citizens have experienced an unequaled economic rise in the last decade. Guangzhou is the boomtown of China. The city of 12 million has the country's highest per capita number of millionaires and multimillionaires. Guangzhou has a long tradition of trading ivory. Today, the demand comes from the newly rich who want to show off their wealth. After the global economic crisis in 2008, many rich Chinese decided to invest heavily in more traditional things like artwork and wildlife products. Ivory and rhino horn have become popular investment instruments. After months of investigation, we finally meet one of the buyers. Frank An curates the art collection of one of the new rich in Chinese society. He likes to spend it on beautiful things.
It's the old ivory. It's done in Beijing from the master. The lotus is a kind of symbol in the Buddhism because it grows up from the mud under the water. Then when it comes out, it's very clean. It's very purified.
Mm-hmm. This collection is worth millions of dollars.
It's the rhino's horn. Yeah, like this.
You drink it? Oh, okay.
Like this. It's for drinking. The head of the tribes, we need to show off to other competitors. I'm powerful. Yeah. White people want to marry a beautiful woman, but not an ugly girl. It's a trophy also. People always kill those dangerous animals. They never feel proud to kill a chicken. We are very lucky. Our ancestors wins in the long trip. If you win, you take everything. So we have the right to do something unfair to the animals.
Mr. An's views may be offensive to many, but he's acting perfectly legally. The Chinese government controls the legal trade in ivory from stockpiles it owns. All ivory products should come with an ID card confirming the legal origin. The government also runs and supplies the commercial carving industry. 37 industrialized carving factories share the 5 tons dispersed by the authorities each year. 78-year-old Pan Shuyu is the master carver at Daijin factory.
这个颜色比较柔和，叫莹润，莹润，看起来好看。其他原料没那么好看，我自己感觉就是这样。
He's worried that ivory will be completely banned.
所以呢，如果你这个象牙万一真的 禁止的话呢，对那个工艺品呢就没好处，就这么长时间积淀下来的技术就没有了，就没有了那个成全了，啊，所以就感到合适了。
In fact, there was a prohibition of ivory products 25 years ago. In 1989, after a dramatic rise in poaching, all international trade in ivory was banned. The effect was striking.
When the ivory trade was banned, the price of ivory collapsed from about $200 per kilogram down to, I don't know, about $50 per kilogram. And poaching more or less disappeared all across Africa.
Elephant populations immediately recovered. But then Japan and later China were granted singular purchases of ivory from the stockpiles of several African countries. 150 tons of ivory flooded onto the market. The appetite for ivory was revived, and the carving industry flourished again. But this time it was different.
In the old days, it would take several masters a few years to carve one elaborate carving. But today, in the carving factories, it's dental drills. People use dental drills. This type of industrialization of ivory carving, this is what's going to kill elephants.
Carving factories claim that all of their ivory is legal. But if the government only supplies 5 tons a year, the numbers just don't add up.
If it's equally distributed among 37 carving factories, each carving factory gets a couple hundred kilograms. And if you look at the size and the scale, how many people working in the carving factory, you'll figure out that, how much this carving factory had to use illegal ivory.
Again, we rig our investigator with a hidden camera and send her out to speak with carvers to find out where they're getting their ivory. Her target area is a mall in Guangzhou, well known for its ivory retailers. As cover, the investigator tells the shop owners that she has a piece she'd like to have carved. Finally, a carver agrees to see her at his home. The carver has learned his craft from a master carver in Hong Kong. Now he has 20 apprentices in his workshop. His business is approved by the government. The investigator manages to win its trust. He is proud of his craft and frankly admits that he specializes in making fake antiques.
但是我们的东西呢，就是给别人做旧的，就是做，我们没有古董的嘛，都是现代的。古玩城呢，基本上9个里面就有8个半是假的。
The carver also says that controls on these products are tight, but he knows people in Fujian province who traffic illegal ivory and rhino horn.
对，都是走私嘛，都是偷渡弄进来的嘛，放在那个木材里面啊，或者他们有他们的办法的嘛，有时候也会被查到啊，被压掉。
Our investigator also asks about carved rhino horn.
踢脚的量呢，就投资的话，这个是肯定会涨价。我们一路做过来，我们做的东西全部在涨价，没有跌价。
It is estimated that 90% of ivory trade in China is illegal. The legal trade, however, provides the perfect cover.
So currently, China allows 5 tons of ivory to be sold legally every year. The government's estimate for the demand is 200 tons a year. So this isn't meeting the supply, it's not meeting that demand, but what it's doing is it's giving the public a very confused message. Nobody knows what's legal, nobody knows what's illegal. And the big thing we found previously was that the traders use the legal trade to launder illegal ivory.
The forestry police are charged with the increasingly impossible task of controlling the illegal market. We have the rare opportunity to film a raid with them. This is a market in Beijing. Many wildlife products are sold and bought here, but it is small pickings by any standard of the illegal trade. This dealer tries to explain his products are carved from mammoth, not ivory. But the officers don't believe him. The dealer shows his ID cards to the police officers. They confiscate his goods and take him in for further questioning, but he was telling the truth and was later released. This woman also claimed to sell mammoth ivory, but the texture of the material tells the officer otherwise.
It also makes it very difficult to enforce. Forestry police and customs officers sometimes complain that this system makes it very difficult for them to distinguish what's illegal and what's legal.
This small shopkeeper was later charged with selling illegal ivory and now faces 5 to 10 years in jail. The overwhelming amount of carved ivory for sale in shops or markets, whether illegal or not, is still only a fraction of the vast amount of raw ivory estimated to reach China week after week.
If literally tens and tens of tons of ivory is reaching China, where is it going? Those tusks are going somewhere in either China or neighboring countries, and they're just sitting there. And they're waiting for the time when they will be worth literally a fortune.
Where it's going is to people that are investing in the extinction of Africa's elephants. And they think that's a very smart investment because they believe there'll never be any more elephants or any more rhinos than there are now, which will mean their investments will increase in value.
The grim reality is that elephants and rhinos are trapped in a deadly spiral driven by the merciless laws of the free market. Wildlife trade has become big business for organized crime. Only they can provide the money and logistics to shift hundreds and thousands of tons of contraband around the globe.
Some of the networks that exist are highly specialized, but there are, existing, well-established, long-established criminal networks and groups that simply turn to particular activity because it is profitable.
In fact, after the trade in drugs and weapons, wildlife trafficking has become the most lucrative black market business. It's estimated to be worth $20 billion annually.
Wildlife crime is the attractive one because the risks of getting caught are pretty small. And then if you do get caught, then in many countries of the world, the penalty is going to be small, but the profits, depending on what you're dealing in, you're going to get more from them than you are smuggling cocaine or heroin.
Low risks and high profits. It's no surprise then that wildlife trafficking has caught the attention of other groups as well. African rebel groups, including Uganda's Lord's Resistance Army, are known to finance their activities in part by trafficking ivory. Al-Shabaab militia also dabbles in ivory trafficking, especially in neighboring Kenya.
Al-Shabaab definitely plays a role in the ivory trade. We know certainly that Al-Shabaab taxes elephant ivory that comes across the border into Somalia and then goes into Somali ports, Mogadishu, Kismayo, and Barawe.
If I'm a rebel, if I'm a terrorist and I'm located in Eastern Africa or Central Africa, and I look around me and I say, right, I need money to go out and buy more AK-47s or to buy Semtex or whatever. It's not long before my focus is going to drop upon this large creature with big grey ears and these two white things that stick out the front of its face, which apparently people in Asia are willing to pay a lot of money for.
It's not only criminal cartels, terrorist groups, and rebel militia that are making millions from wildlife trafficking. Kenya is fourth on the worldwide corruption ladder.
There's no way a container load of ivory can pass through Kenya's international border with Uganda, come down the Kenyan highways and reach the port of Mombasa and get onto a ship and go to China. It cannot happen unless there is corruption down that entire chain. The people who are at the highest level of these cartels in Kenya are very well connected, politically, economically, with the police, maybe with the customs authorities, with the ports authorities. And so they are probably involved in many other illicit activities. It's not just ivory. Ivory is just one of the things that they're doing. And so they have people who protect them.
Worldwide, many poachers and smaller dealers have been arrested.
We're picking off the small fry, we're not getting the big fish. That's because we're not taking the time to try and identify who the big fish are. You know, if you think of the number of specific agencies or police, customs officials, drug squads that are dedicated every day to try to combat drug trafficking around the world, you know, the numbers must run into the tens, if not hundreds of thousands. How many officers around the world are dedicated to trying to combat or identify wildlife traffickers? Very, very few.
We're not dealing with dismantling the networks on an international level. And even the international agencies like Interpol, like CITES, they don't have the powers to deal with that. Interpol is reliant on local police in Interpol offices in the countries where they're based. And time again, any efforts they make to crack down on crime bosses in places like Vietnam get scuppered because of leaks from the police force.
It's journalist Julian Rademeyer who has succeeded where organizations like Interpol have so far failed, dismantling a major trafficking network. This video, obtained by Rademeyer, was shot by Chumlong Lemthongthai, a Thai national who was identified as a major setup man for an illegal Vietnamese trophy hunter.
Eventually you had criminal syndicates with links to Laos who were trying to line up hunters to take part in illegal hunts, and they found a pliant South African game farm owner and hunting outfitter. And they then went around to brothels and strip clubs around Johannesburg and Pretoria and started recruiting young women who'd been trafficked to South Africa to work in the sex trade, young Thai women. And suddenly you have large numbers of Vietnamese and Thai women shooting rhinos.
Lemthongthai is now serving a 30-year sentence in a South African jail. Rademeyer also traced him back to his client.
He was the lieutenant for the syndicate kingpin, a man called Vishay Kersavang. The US State Department have put a $1 million bounty for Kersavang's arrest, but he's still in business and completely and utterly untouchable. The Laotian government won't touch him. No one else has ever been able to nail him.
In South Africa, rhino farmers are lobbying hard for the legalization of the rhino horn trade. This property belongs to one of the biggest rhino farmers in South Africa. John Hume, who made a fortune in tourism, turned to breeding rhinos. He has over 1,000 on his farms. Not surprisingly, he is one of the strongest advocates for legalization. To protect his herd, he employs a private ranger army. Still, poachers find their way in.
She was a young cow, pregnant, but all of her breeding life still ahead of her. And when you lose an adult female like this, it's devastating for the species into the future. It's exactly what we don't want, and it's exactly what our policies are creating.
In John Hume's view, animal conservationists who oppose a legalization of trade are as bad as poachers.
They may as well be pulling the trigger themselves, because the anti-traders are stopping us fighting this effectively. Therefore, they are just the same as the poachers. They're the killers of my rhino.
Although Hume's black and white rhinos roam in a vast area, they are being partially domesticated with medical care and additional feeding. Hume considers himself not only a businessman, but also a conservationist.
Unfortunately, I am labeled as being in it only for the money, but I breed rhinos. And if I were to make money out of breeding rhinos, which I don't now, but if I was selling the horn and I was to make money out of breeding rhinos, there will be hundreds of other people who want to breed rhinos.
To protect his rhinos, Hume regularly dehorns them, but doesn't destroy the pieces. He stores them in a high-security vault.
The legalization of trade will not stop the poaching as such. But at the moment, we've closed our doors. We have said to the demand, never mind what we want to call them, syndicates, users, whatever. We've said to the demand, we will not sell you 1 kilo of rhino horn. Not one, go away. So what do? They say, okay, we'll go away, we'll deal with the poacher. Now, if you have legalization, then that'll be different. At least we will compete against the poacher. So, to me, it's a stupid thing, and it's similar to the bootlegging we had in America. The banning of booze in America only made certain people rich. And it didn't work, as we know. It didn't work.
However, most wildlife trade experts agree there is no sound economic model for legalization, and that it is simply too much of a risk to test it.
You know, there's 1.3 billion Chinese. 10% of them are now middle class. Now 100 million people now want rhino horns. How the hell are you going to supply the demand for 100 million people? You don't have enough rhinos to breed fast enough to supply all those rhino horns. Not in a million years can you meet that demand. Never, ever. They live in cuckoo world if they think they're going to, by supplying the demand, they're going to stop rhino poaching.
That experiment has been done, and that experiment failed. So why on earth would we take a risk with an animal which is on the brink of extinction? Why would we take that risk? So that what, a few people can make some money? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Flooding the market with illegal wildlife products is no option for most conservationists. Instead, they are turning to consumers with a strong message to be part of the solution, not the problem. Chinese celebrities like actor Jackie Chan are raising their voices in an effort to change the hearts and minds of their countrymen and stop them buying wildlife products.
If you're buying rhino horn, you may be paying for more than just horn. You're paying for guns, bullets, poison arrows, chainsaws, axes, and machetes to hack off the face of the rhino. And you are paying for the life of a beautiful creature. So please tell your friends and relatives, never buy products made from rhino horn. When the buying stops, the killing can too.
Well, there are definitely some people out there whose interest is purely commercial, and they're looking to effectively invest in extinction. They're looking to get the value of this product. I think that's some people, but there are other people who are buying these products out of ignorance. People have to understand that their action of purchasing this price is actually driving the poaching. I think most of them dissociate themselves from the killing of the animals, and I think that's the connection that needs to be made to persuade people it's not a good thing to buy ivory.
Non-profit groups working in China know that when people have information, they care. So it is particularly important to communicate that elephants actually have to be killed to get the tusks. Since the Chinese word for ivory is tooth, many Chinese still believe that tusks fall out naturally.
We will never change things in China, for example, but the Chinese can change it if they have the right information.
Changing the minds of consumers is crucial, but the tide cannot change fast enough. Conservationists agree that what is needed now to send a clear message to consumers is to immediately ban all trade in all endangered wildlife worldwide. Surveys indicate that this strategy could be successful, especially in China, where people look to their leaders for moral guidance.
We asked previous ivory buyers, what would make you not buy ivory in the future? The answer that got the most point, 60%, was for government to make ivory buying illegal in all circumstances.
Years of campaigning are taking effect. 10 countries have destroyed their ivory stockpiles in a stand against illegal ivory trade. Last year, the United States and even Hong Kong and China joined in.
Destruction of ivory is telling people ivory consumption is immoral. And this is something that we really need to build in consumers everywhere. There are things that money shouldn't buy.
Changing the minds of consumers and pressing governments to take action is crucial in the race to save these iconic animals. But what has become increasingly evident is that it is just as important to engage the people in the places where poaching is happening. Many poachers are still being recruited from villages around the wildlife reserves.
The communities that live with this wildlife are not supported adequately in this country so that it makes sense for them to protect that wildlife.
Changing the economic conditions in villages around the wildlife reserves would make a big difference.
At the moment, conservation is seen as a white man's game. There's only one way to deal with the problem. You've got to get the community on your side. And believe me, nobody comes into any of these villages, what we call frontline villages. Nobody. Not a strange car, not a strange people will drive down the street of a village without not being recognized.
The Northern Rangeland Trust in northern Kenya was set up to do just that. The idea is to enable communities to profit from animal conservation and make protection more attractive to them than poaching. The 9-1 Anti-Poaching Unit is a part of this new concept. It's made up of members of different tribes, so they have the cooperation of all the communities in this large area. They have informants who tell them immediately about suspicious activities. And the villagers seem to appreciate the presence of the 9-1 team. The concept of community conservation is making a big difference in this part of northern Kenya. Poaching has dropped by a third, and locals now know that protecting animals brings tourists into the community lands, and tourists bring money. It was the influence and pressure from his community that finally made Lotok change sides.
Ile kitu ilinifanya niwachana kabisa. Nilikuja nikawana mimi ni mtu ambaye pamoja na ile grupu yangu tulikuja ikawa hakuna mtu anatupenda mpaka familia nyumbani, ikawa ni kitu kwamba kama tumepeanwa kutokana mahali popote ni kupigwa risasi. Haya pia una maisha mzuri ambaye unakaa kama mtu unakaa saa yote kujishuku, ukiona hata watu ambao wanakuja tu ni kama wewe una mtu unataka kushikwa. Mpaka nikaona heri basi wacha ni serene, kama ni kuuawa ni serene, nikapeana roho ni kama.
Community conservation is a model that is slowly beginning to take hold in other parts of Africa as well. Millions of years of evolution are coming to an end as elephants and rhino continue to disappear at breathtaking speed.
Rhino poaching will end the day when there's no rhinos left. Finished. Or the day it made so difficult for the poacher to come in here that it's impossible to poach a rhino. That's what we must do.
Extinction is no longer a byproduct of poaching. It has become its very purpose.
If we don't nip this in the bud, we will lose all of our rhinos within 10 years, I believe. We will lose almost all of our wild elephants within 10 years.
Poaching is an international crime. It will take a concerted international response to stop it.
I think when we lose these animals, we lose part of our humanity. What are we leaving for our children and our grandchildren? We're leaving a really impoverished world environmentally, which means we've basically sold all the family jewels, so their inheritance is going to be squandered if we don't take care of it now.
We know from experience that only when the demand stops, so will the killing.
The world has two choices. We can have elephants or we can have ivory trade. We can't have both.